Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we will be doing a deep dive into the camera mode in Infinity Nikki, followed by me taking some photos in different locations. Let's get started. First, open up your camera mode. You can see that we can move the camera left and right, and up and down. You can also zoom it in and out. This is basically you physically moving the camera forward and back in space. You can also rotate the camera around Nikki. Or you can rotate Nikki herself. Now, open up the adjustment box. The first option allows us to toggle Nikki's visibility on and off. Next, we have the focal length, ranging from an ultra-wide 10mm to a normal 55mm. Adjusting the slider seems to zoom the camera in and out. So what's the difference between the zoom and the focal length? The main difference between focal lengths is that the short focal lengths, such as 15mm, have a wide field of view, exaggerating the perspective and making objects in the foreground appear larger compared to the background. A longer focal length like 55mm has a narrower field of view, which compresses the perspective, making objects in the background appear closer to the subject. Let's use the Fey-Wish sprite statue as a reference. We'll first change the focal length to 55mm. Notice how the background compresses and the statue appears much larger and closer to Nikki. I adjusted the zoom so Nikki takes about the entire height of the screen. Now, let's change the focal length to 10mm, or ultra-wide. I'll bring the camera in close so Nikki fills the height of the screen again. Now look how tiny the statue is. You can also see how everything seems a bit distorted as well, due to the ultra-wide angle. Okay, let's try another example. This time, we'll use the snowy mountain in the background as a reference. We'll repeat the test again, starting at 55mm. Adjust the camera so Nikki takes up the same space on the screen for consistency. See how massive the mountain appears? Can't even see the peak. Now change the focal length to 10mm and adjust the camera. The mountain looks tiny. We can even see the NPCs to our left and the Stylist Guild building. This is why in portrait photography, longer focal lengths are typically used to create a more pleasing and proportional field of view. Of course, there's nothing wrong with using a wide angle if that's the effect you're going for. Enough about focal length. The next setting is rotation. You can rotate the camera 180 degrees to the left and right. Next is aperture. In real photography, the aperture affects both the exposure and the depth of field. In the game though, it doesn't affect exposure, rather it only affects the depth of field. The in-game camera defaults to f16, a very small aperture with a large depth of field. So both the subject and background appear in sharp focus. As we open up the aperture, let's say f1.9 for example, the depth of field becomes very shallow. We can see both the background and the foreground are out of focus. You can instantly see how this can be used to create some very aesthetically pleasing photos, depending on your composition. A quick side note, changing the focal length also affects the depth of field. An ultra-wide angle like 10mm has a much deeper depth of field than 55mm. You will notice that changing the aperture for a 55mm focal length changes the depth of field much more dramatically. Okay, I don't want to go too in-depth with the technical aspects of photography, but let me know in the comments if you have other questions about it. Anyways, the next setting is the grid. This brings up a 3x3 grid, which is very useful for the rule of thirds principle commonly used in photography to take a balanced and pleasing photo. The last two settings are toggling the NPC visibility on and off, as well as toggling the Eureka visibility on and off. Now let's go on to the graphics tab. Vignette changes the darkness of the area around the frame of an image. Soft light intensity controls the bloom, making bright lights have a hazy glow. The soft light range controls the size of the bloom. Brightness raises or lowers all the tones in the image at once, such as the highlights, midtones, and shadows. Exposure controls the intensity of the light across the entire image, simulating changes in camera exposure. Contrast adjusts the difference between the brightest and darkest parts of an image. High contrast makes the image pop, while low contrast softens it. Saturation controls the intensity of the color, like how vivid or bright it is. Natural saturation controls the intensity of the colors in the scene without artificial manipulation. Highlights target and adjust the brightest parts of an image, which is good for recovering detail in an overexposed sky or bright surfaces. Shadows targets and adjusts the darkest parts of an image, such as lifting the shadows. Now let's go to the Pose tab. There are a variety of pose categories available, such as flourish, grace, turn, and outfit pose. You can see, as I select each pose, there is a progress bar on the bottom for the looping animation. You can pause the bar at any time to adjust it for your photo. You can deselect and select the pose again to start playing the animation. You can also see the option to face the camera. Toggling this on will cause Nikki to look at the camera, even as you rotate it around her. When face the camera is toggled off, Nikki will keep facing whatever direction she was before. Another thing to note, do you see how some of the poses have an icon of an eye? This indicates which poses allow you to toggle the face the camera option. If a pose does not have the eye icon, you will see how the face the camera toggle is locked. I'll just toggle through a couple more poses for you to see. Now let's go on to the lighting tab. This section is pretty straightforward. It allows you to introduce an external light source that is independent from the ambient light. Be careful when using the lighting options, as it could make certain images look unnatural. For example, right now we can see that the sunlight is coming from the left, casting shadows to the right. But if we put a light on the right side, it could make the shadows look unnatural. Hue lighting has a variety of options to introduce colored light. This one can be used to change the mood or make it more cinematic, depending on how you use them. And finally, ambient lighting has some more unique lighting options. Now, the last tab is filters, which is self-explanatory. Just like in many social media apps, you can apply a filter to your overall image for a different creative look. Not much more to say here. Now, if you are wondering why you don't have some of the same poses or lighting options as me, you can go to the Camera Modifications menu, located at the top right of the screen. In here, you can use upgrade packs to level up your lighting, poses, and filters categories. You get upgrade packs from completing photo-related quests and photo expeditions. Photo expeditions is the second icon in the top right. You have to go around and take pictures at each of the locations based on the photo clue given to you. You could also check out my other video that covers all the photo expedition locations if you want to get a lot of upgrade packs quickly. I'll link it below. The third and last menu icon is Momo's album, which contains the photo you have taken. You can select and download these photos to your local device. The last feature is the shining perspective. It will change your current camera parameters, but it will cycle through a variety of preset poses and camera angles. Try it out. It has some good angles. I'm just going to grab a couple photos here. Now we so far have only seen poses while Nikki is standing, so let's go try some seated poses. You can run southwest from the plaza to the swing by the path. This is actually one of the photo expedition locations. Here, I'm just going to mess with the camera settings for a bit and go through some of the poses. Okay, I'm going to try a longer focal length and a larger aperture. This gives me a nice shallow depth of field. Next, I'll go to the graphics tab to change the settings a bit. So I'm not really going to use vignetting, which works more for dramatic photos. I'm going for a softer, dreamier feel, so I'll increase the soft light intensity. I'll up the brightness a bit to lift all the tones. I'll up the contrast to make the flowers pop a bit more. I'll leave the saturation as is and adjust the highlights, and also lift the shadows a bit. There are some unique poses like Nikki holding a bouquet of flowers, or Nikki looking afar. I'll cycle through the rest of the poses for you to see. Now let's go to the lighting tab. Like I said before, I'm going for a dreamier image, so I'll pick the white edge lighting. Now for the filters. Going through them, I don't think I actually want to use any of them for this image, so I'll just leave them off. I'll rotate and adjust the camera a bit to introduce some foreground elements, which can help the storytelling aspect of a photo. I'll have Nikki face away from the camera, so she is looking into the distance. And let me try to position the camera behind this potted plant. I'll turn on the grid to help with the composition. Okay, I think my camera is getting a bit stuck in the hitbox of some of the items. Let me try from another angle. I'll try aiming from a higher perspective this time, with Nikki looking up at the camera. Let's have Nikki face the camera this time as well. I'll position Nikki's face on the top right third of the grid. Maybe I'll try another pose. Nah, I like this one. Okay, I think that looks decent. Let's go to another spot. Run southeast along the path. across the bridge. You will see the lakeside picnic area on your right. This is a cute little spot that has a unique feature. When you sit with a long dress, the dress spreads out in a circle. I'll equip the Flutterstorm outfit to demonstrate this effect. Okay, Nikki sits down, and you should see how the dress beautifully spreads around. I now want to take some portrait photos, so let's increase the focal length and increase the aperture size again to reduce the depth of field. I'll move the camera up a bit to show the spread of the dress better. Let's go through the pose options. You will see that there are some different ones available compared to the swing. These are the poses Nikki will have available when sitting on stools as well. Actually, let's try to take some night photos instead. I'll go to the Run ParaPal menu option and change the time to nighttime. I'll skip the minigame for now. Alright, let's take some photos. I'll adjust my focal length and aperture again. I like using 50mm for the focal length and f2.8 for the aperture. This is a common real-world focal length. I'll shoot from a higher angle looking down to emphasize the spread of the dress. I'll have Nikki face the camera for this as well. Just a note, if you move the camera to an extreme angle, Nikki will stop looking at the camera. Let's try adding some lighting. At nighttime, the lighting effects are a lot more pronounced, but you can get some very interesting stage light effects. I'll try the moon blue option. But let me try the white edge lighting first and lower the intensity. It's not bad, but not exactly the effect I'm going for. Let's go back to the moon blue lighting. Okay, not bad. Let's try getting a little closer, focusing on Nikki's face. Whoops, caught Nikki half blinking. This is a good reason to pause the animation. Okay, now I'll try panning around to see a bit more of the details of the dress. I really love how shiny this dress is. Let's adjust the camera position a bit so Nikki looks back at the camera. I'm trying to keep Nikki in focus while having her dress be out of focus, causing the shimmers to create a nice bokeh effect. Ooh, I like how this one turned out. It'll work as the YouTube thumbnail. Not sure which lighting I should use now. Some lighting seems to make the image look a bit flat. I think the moon blue option still looks best for what I'm aiming for. Now let's try some standing photos again. I'll adjust the focal length and aperture. And I'll pick a different lighting option this time. I want the lakeside building as the background, but I can still rotate Nikki to get the body positioning I want. Okay, now I'll bring the camera in close and get a headshot portrait. Now I'll pan around the dress a bit while zoomed in to admire the details of the Flutterstorm dress. The jewelry and gloves are gorgeous. The amount of details all over are mind-boggling. The butterflies too. I love how they fly around. Okay, enough admiring the dress. Let's go take a landscape photo. I'll take the warp spire to the Dream Warehouse rooftop. I'll go to the edge of the platform and go into camera mode. Let's adjust Nikki's pose. And then we'll add some lighting. Now I'll adjust the focal length. Remember how a longer focal length reduces the field of view? It's not what I want in this case. So let's try a wider focal length of 16mm. We'll keep the aperture at f16 for a deep depth of field, keeping everything in the image sharp. I'll raise the camera position and aim it down a bit to get the entire horizon in the frame. Actually, let's use the widest focal length of 10mm to capture everything. Alright, that seems decent. Anyways, I hope this video was helpful for you, and I look forward to all the great photos you take in the future. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. I really appreciate it.